is Chris Arakawinzi. I'm from the traditional territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which is located on what is known as the Bruce Peninsula, Ontario, Canada. The Saugeen Ojibwe people have depended on the resource of fish and the waters to provide food, culture, and economics needed to survive since time immemorial. I come from a fishing family, and fishing has been an important part of our lives and our livelihood. My parents owned and operated a sustainable fishing business selling native fish at local markets around the area. Over the last decade, however, we have noticed the impacts of climate change on fish populations, especially lake whitefish.
Andrew Akwinzi. I'm from the Chippewas and Nawash, sustainable commercial fisherman.
My name is Natasha Akwinzi. I'm from Naxua First Nation, living at Nayashiniming with my husband and sons.
Now our main catch is a dickmeg, whitefish, and that it's been in decline in the last little bit.
Whitefish spawn in the fall on the shoals. They're not like other fish that travel up streams and rivers to spawn. They spawn in the rocks and the algae and the short grass that's out there, and use it as protection for their eggs. The ice forms slowly over the winter and offers more protection to their eggs and their young ones as they hatch very early in the spring, from the wind and the wave action from being washed away and into the deeper waters where the predators can find them.
Not been much ice cover over the last couple of years, and that it's been very sporadic, not very heavy, and that we get a thaw in January now, and that melts everything down. There hasn't been too many good things I can say with the climate change, and that has come our way for fishing, and that I've had to shut my business down. The whitefish have become more scarce. I remember my uncle and myself fishing just over here, and that setting a net under the ice back in 75, 76, I believe it was, and that it hasn't iced up enough to be able to set nets under the ice safely anymore.
In 2018, there was an order that was placed for 20 pounds of fish, 1 box of whitefish, 1 box of salmon, 10 pounds of each. 2 months later, we were able to give her 10 pounds of whitefish, and she never did receive her salmon. That was really unheard of for us.
And we would cross it, and that the animals would be able to cross. Nowadays, the ice barely forms. Pack ice comes in, pack ice goes out. It doesn't get thick enough to do anything on.
In early 2018, we started a not-for-profit group called Boggatawat Alliance, which means they set a net in the Anishinaabe-Moan. It was to look at the whitefish decline and climate change. The other things that we have done with it is hosted many events, something like ribbon skirt making, to shoreline cleanups, to fishermen celebrations.
Right now I'm currently working at the Fisheries Assessment Program as an Indigenous Ecological Knowledge Interviewer in my community. These interviews are focused towards the decline of lake whitefish, but also the fishermen and women stories that I like to share.
Have you ever wondered what would happen if there was a lack of precipitation? The farm fields would get very dry and the crops wouldn't grow as big. There are many droughts in southern Canada. For example, there are many in the prairies. In 2016, there was a massive wildfire in Fort McMurray which burnt approximately 1,450,000 acres of land. It also burnt 2,400 homes and buildings. This caused 80,000 people to flee northern Alberta and 500 species lost their home. In 2013, the southern Alberta flood had 100 millimeters of rain. This caused the Bow River to flood the streets of Calgary. This hit many towns and cities. In 2021, Northern Ontario had approximately 167 wildfires and burned 850,000 hectares. Lightning and very dry weather caused these fires. This is because of the lack of precipitation. An example of lack of precipitation can be found in a small village of Glen Huron. This ditch in spring used to have plenty of flowing water. Now, you can see there's hardly any water. With the lack of precipitation, of rainfall and snow, this causes a drought in many lakes and rivers. For example, this water wheel has lost plenty of water to flow to rivers. With the lack of precipitation, this can cause many plants and flowers to die.
Well, I'm a local resident here at Orr Lake. I've been here for 24 years. And I have to say, when I first moved up here, the levels of the lake were much higher. I would say about a foot higher. We had definitely northern pike here. Every spring they would come in to spawn. Now we see no pike. And we actually had a few years of carp coming in. Now we have no carp. So I'd have to say there's been a real change even in the quality of water. We're here near the largest aquifer of pure water in the world. But right now, we used to be rated pure in winter, drinkable in summer. That's not true anymore.
Why do you think this changed?
Well, I definitely have to say that we're probably getting some sort of acid rain, but I'm going to say also the weather has changed. We used to get a lot of snow in the winter. We're not getting as much snow. We used to get a bit of rain, a bit of sun, but now we're getting maybe a lot of rain and then 3 or 4 weeks of basically no rain at all. So the weather has changed.
Billion now, I think, taxpayers' dollars. So you and your family and everybody else in this country is paying for this catastrophe that's happening up north.
That's giant. And I'll tell you why we have to take care of this site forever.
Biggest concern is arsenic, especially arsenic trioxide. One of, if not the most toxic forms of arsenic. A single teaspoon will kill a person, and there's 237,000 tons of it underground. They did the math before, and it could kill the world like 10 or 11 times over. Pretty much everyone is affected by it. It's almost like salt or flour.
Water naturally drips steadily, so we have to pump this water out, treat it at the water treatment plant, and then we discharge it. Because we have to ensure that the water never touches arsenic, and then it's a catastrophe after that.
At C1 pit, this is the single greatest risk on site at Giant. Literally just like an open bowl with a creek running next to it. If the creek were to ever overflow, it would fill up the underground and all the arsenic would get saturated. We'd all be doomed. That arsenic dust would start washing away, but then it would start leaching tremendously. If the site were to ever be forgotten, and if water were ever to fill up the mine and it get into Great Slave Lake, it would drain into the Mackenzie, which makes its way into Alberta, and then it could go up the Decho, up into the Arctic Ocean. Right now, they pump it out before it fills up the mine. Even the cleanup that they're doing right now, it's just a temporary fix because they're just freezing it, preventing it from being mobilized.
Permafrost is not intact. The miners have taken out the soil and all that kinds of stuff, and they dug and dug and dug. You need that overburden because that's your insulation. It affected the chambers from continuing to stay frozen, and so that's the reason why they have to freeze it now.
It doesn't just go away. The tailings are exposed, and so the wind can take the dust, and you'll find arsenic 25 kilometers away in the trees, in the soil, and the plants, and the vegetation. There was rabbits that they sampled, and a lot of them had calcification on their bones. Something's not right, and they're being contaminated.
There used to be a lot of smoke, though. The elders, like my dad, they know the difference, like they knew. But who do they talk to? They just have to talk among themselves.
Winter time, when the smoke comes this way, go in the snow. The kid eats snow, got sick and died. I gave it a dog, hand or pus and stuff like that, to shoot him.
My dad used to sit his nets on the 2 islands here, and that's how he feed his dogs, right?
We were getting fish right between Dahdaleh and the giant line, and slowly the dogs started dying.
And you noticed the fish weren't the same. When you clean the fish, they see something. They know that smoke lands somewhere, right?
Way down to the lake, he saw ptarmigan. We're gonna pluck it and start cooking it, but when he lifted up the feathers, it didn't look right. So I just prayed over it, and then I put it in the compost.
But they've always said that it was safe, so everybody continued to swim, feed their dogs and things like that. How people died, they still say it's safe, but it's not safe. Once it's disturbed, soil and everything, it's all...
Very first time we got our arsenic testing for the kids was really high in their toenails, and they were always outside. Every single day they were playing outside.
You said you were always swim there? Where?
Like in that, like, you know where ends right there? That's where they go. They're putting their heads underwater and just like playing around.
Remember I told you guys not to put your head under the water though?
I got goggles.
And then after they get better, I get sick. And then we got called, and she said it's probably because you guys are eating too much fish. And I said, no, it can be, because my kids don't like fish. Like a year later, I think, because we were living uptown by this point, we redid the testing, and the arsenic levels for the kids all went down. And that's because they're not playing outside down here every day.
Why, when the doctors and the scientists had concerns all the way back in the late 1940s, things didn't really move until 1967, 1970. There was concern with the miners. They knew, the health officials, the government officials knew what was happening. Even before the death of the child, there was, amongst residents, yelling concern.
What? Not today. Coal mine, chemical mine, yeah. I work hard for my kids.
They had cancer too.
So you worked at Con Mine?
Oh yeah, 19 years. I was a trackman, I was a blaster, cage stander, I was a hoistman, and the conditions of my health and everything else, it was all due to the thing of mine. In the dampness and everything else, my bones, and my age is 63. It was in the water, leaching through the rock, and if you work the old side, a lot of my friends are gone because of the exposure we had to all kinds of stuff down there. They wouldn't admit to it, but that's exactly what was, the arsenic.
That's why there's a lot of animals coming to town now, because they've got nothing for them to eat. They can't talk. We can see how they are surviving and whether they're eating. Is it safe for them to eat here?
Maybe I go to my cabin, I never see no bear, nothing. I never see no rabbit, nothing. You should be lost.
He used to take snow from the back of the warehouse where there's no dogs around or this fresh snow just landed, just to make tea. When you pour it in a cup, it's like oil, glossy. Didn't taste the same.
Behind my warehouse used to be lots of raspberries. Nothing now, nothing growing. There's some woman that washed her hair with the snow. They melted, they said the hair all fell off.
That was not too good, eating no berries.
I've been hearing some elders tell stories about how that area used to be really, really beautiful.
Mom, when she was little, and Grandma, they used to just go right across here and go berry picking. Our generation never got to experience none of that.
Look at it, and it's just dead. Something growing there anymore.
We need to be protecting the lands and cleaning it up.
So you saw on 3 separate occasions? Blue sap.
Blue sap. Never seen blue sap before.
And who's gonna help us?
Maybe it can cure cancer. So Con turned their arsenic into sludge? I don't know much about Con.
I know. That's the untold story.